any of these items, could you please let us know? Any conflict?
No.
Okay, good. Then we'll have a quorum until 11. And at this time, if there's anyone present, including the applicant, property owner, staff, who intends to provide testimony in any of the quasi-judicial hearings, please stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn in.
If you plan to speak at all, please raise your hand and stand up and
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Y'all are sworn.
okay. The first item on our public, we have public comment. Is there anybody that wishes to speak, not on the cases that we're going to have today, but just as a general purpose? Seeing that, oh, I couldn't see. Is there somebody? He's here on a case. Okay, so seeing none, we'll close the public comment. At this time, we are going to hear a public hearing on VAR 2023-0088-125 Strandview Avenue, front and rear setback variation. Approve. We can either approve with conditions, deny the variance on 125 Strandview, a variance of 6 feet for the front setback and a variance of 7.5 feet from the rear setback. So is there any ex parte communication that needs to be disclosed? Start on that.
None.
Just drive by. Doug, ex parte?
I drove by the property.
Very good. Make sure you're talking into the microphone.
Sorry.
Is there any witnesses that need to be qualified as experts?
We were qualified for yesterday's proceedings.
Yes,
Do
but
it
by
again.
this board,
Perfect.
and then you won't have to do it ever again.
Good job.
Okay, if you could just tell us your qualifications and the board will vote on whether they're going to qualify you.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Probst. I have been in the planning field for 15 years. I have a master's in urban and regional planning, and I'm AICP certified.
My name is Jason Smalley. I'm the senior planner here with the town. I have a roughly 7 years experience with planning, and I also have a master's degree in planning and urban design.
Okay, do y'all approve them as experts?
Yes, do we need to vote individually or just?
Just-
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 You're
Okay,
passed.
perfect.
Okay. Has the applicant for this received a copy of the backup material for this from the staff? Okay. Okay, and staff, proceed with this presentation, please.
Excellent. So as I mentioned, my name is Jason Smalley. I'm the senior planner here with the town's planning and zoning office. Today, I'm here to present the variance request for 125 Strandview. The applicant is requesting 2 separate variances to redevelop a single-family home on their roughly triangular lot. They are requesting a front setback or a street side setback of 6 feet to reduce the 25-foot setback to 19. They are also requesting a rear setback variance of 7.5 feet from the 20-foot setback, providing for 12.5 feet of rear setback to the home. As you can see in the package, as I mentioned before, the lot is triangular in nature, so the buildable area is also going to be triangular. You'll notice that the roughly rectangular shape of the house extends forward and backwards on the lot, thus necessitating the request for the variances. The applicant has provided information that the buildable area for this lot would be roughly 1,550 square feet. So any development under today's codes would need to fall within those setback boxes. The staff is here for any questions that you may have. The applicants are here, and the applicant's designer and technical expert is on the phone, also available for questions.
Any questions for Jason?
None. None.
Jason, there wasn't a sign on the property. In fact, none of the properties had signs on them.
So staff was notified that for LPA meetings, the signs themselves weren't necessarily needed. They would be required before the final determination before town council. If we,
Frankly, I'd like to request that change because we are going to the site too, and it's so much easier to,
Especially with no addresses.
no addresses and things. That 125 does have an address, but it would be great to have an address.
I would be more than happy to go ahead and discuss that with the planning staff and see if we can go ahead and fit that into our regular LPA process.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Doug, did you have any comment,
No, ma'am.
questions? Not at this time. We'll probably talk again.
Absolutely.
Okay. Whoever's going to present for the owner. Okay, would you state your name for the record?
Okay, good morning. My name is Brian Turners, George and Jeannie Mendoza's son-in-law.
Okay,
So basically, as you can see from what Jason has provided and the staff report, the lot is triangular in nature. Basically, with the design that was created by the architect, we feel would be the best way to aesthetically rebuild the house on that property. There is an existing 20-foot easement on the site in question, which butts up to a condominium commercial property. So we don't feel that the reduction in variance in there would affect anything as far as the neighborhood, in reference to the east side of the property. We have also spoken to the neighbors and they've provided letters. The ones facing the north side of the property, I believe it would be, behind the residence, which they feel that wouldn't, affect their, anything as far as reducing the setback in the rear. So in order, and as it states in the report, the purpose of the zoning district is to provide where the single-family detached home is a predominant land use. So we feel that in this case, by granting the variance and being able to build the single-family home to do that, we would be achieving that. In addition to, there's an existing structure on the property, which is a pool, which in the report it states in 2017 a variance was granted. But in building or suggesting to build in the way was outlined in the report would conflict with, where that pool is located. So based on all of those factors, we feel that it's an unreasonable burden to be able to, one, try to design a triangular type home to fit in that lot within the setbacks that are provided, considering the existing structures. Again, in some of the plans, it talks about the easement as a right-of-way, which it's not. That 20-foot easement ends at the property line of the rear resident. So at that time, I don't feel, with the 20-foot variance in place, I'm sorry, the 20-foot easement in place, that it'd be unreasonable, to request a reduction of 6 feet approximately on that side of the property in order to achieve, single-family home design that is usable for all the family. Trying to build, smaller square home within a triangular lot based on some of these setbacks is a burden of itself.
okay. Any questions for the applicant?
Question on I was looking at the staff report and the surveys that you have in there. There seems to be an older survey that shows a footprint, but it's a very small footprint. I think, at least I remember that home pre-storm, and I think it was bigger than that
Yes.
footprint. So what was the square footage prior to the storm, and what are you asking today?
Yeah, so the square footage of the home that exists there is
Mhm.
1,082 square feet.
Yeah.
With the new design, it's an additional 67 square feet of livable space.
And that's with 2 stories now, correct?
Yeah,
Or
well,
or the footprint, just the
yeah,
footprint
with two
itself?
stories, right, just the footprint itself, correct.
Okay.
Don?
No question.
Well, there's certainly a big setback from the condominium over. I walked in, it was like 42 feet from where you're planning on, where the other one was. And I don't think that there would be any issues with that on that side. And it looks like you're talking about, I don't think that there's a dimension on the left side of the house that's hanging over the lot. What are we talking?
Which part of the property are you talking about?
The back of the property.
So what would face the rear, where
Right,
we're
the
requesting
rear.
the 7 feet? And what was the question, I'm sorry?
How much does it hang over where the property line would be?
Let me see if we could,
Mm.
for the specifics, get the expert on.
Jane, if you look at their graphics that they show.
Right.
They show roof overhang and then they show the green lines or your walls. But that's not your encroachment into the setback. The setback is that 20-foot dimension.
Oh, you're right. I'm
That-
sorry. I
that's a
apologize.
setback.
20,
Yeah.
20 feet. They're requesting. Okay.
So are we addressing each variance separately or are we addressing both variances at the same time now?
We can talk about both of them at the same time, I guess.
Did you want to present also on the
Rear setback?
rear setback variance?
Yeah, so that, in what I spoke to before, that's where we have the letter from the residents in the rear. So yeah, because of this shape of the lot, and there's about 5 or 6 that run along this condominium, so it's very specific to that neighborhood in that area. It's probably less than 1% of what the properties are on the island that have that type of shaped lot. So yeah, but as far as to the rear, in order to get the most buildable square footage and a design that flows with that lot, we feel that that would be aesthetically pleasing in design. And we spoke to the neighbors in the rear who provided letters stating that that wouldn't affect them in the least.
Where are these letters? Thank you. Doug, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Do you want to address them separately?
I think we should address them together because you need both to
I
build
mean,
your,
just discussion. Yeah,
for
true,
discussion,
true.
yeah.
Well, I don't really have a problem with the front side and, that is, it's a 20-foot setback in the back and it's saying that we only have 7.5 that we're giving a variance for
That's correct.
because of the roof overhang. Is that right?
No, so the setback is being made to the actual vertical walls themselves. The proposed overhang is going to be looked at during their actual permitting phase, and they would be allowed an additional 36 inches that the roof overhang could extend into the setback.
Let's see.
So if I understand the diagrams, the reduction of the 20-foot setback per code to 12 foot 10 inches is what I'm seeing here.
That's what it looks like. Right.
Yes, so the ask is for 7.5 feet. They've provided saying that it was some amount of inches, 2 or 3 inches. We're asking for the next whole half foot because there may be an issue where it's off an inch or 2 here or there. So we wanted to allow them a little buffer. So they are requesting the 7.5 feet to the rear 20-foot setback. Just make a point that specifically on triangular lots, you'll see that the rear setback had to be created since there isn't one. And I believe there's a diagram in there as well. So the rear setback is actually measured some number of feet into their property from the 90-degree angle. And you'll notice that on the setback example.
Yeah, it looks like you have to draw a line 20 feet across that 90-degree angle.
Exactly.
And then that's ascribes your,
So
Your
there's some number of feet inside of that corner that are not counted towards their rear setback, but do exist in their property.
And Jason, about how many triangle properties do we have?
So we counted it up and there's roughly 5 right along the border of the condominium. They're just created, that was the original platting for it. They seem to be leftover spaces, so they created triangular lots. We don't see this sort of pattern reflected anywhere else. To the best of my knowledge, this area in particular has the highest density of these triangular lots that I can find on the island.
I've got a question for you, Jason, and to Sarah also. Have you guys seen this treatment before of triangular lots where you create a rear yard and then measure from that arbitrary location? Have you seen that anywhere else? Because that's the only code I know that does that. Usually it would be side, front for most places.
I have not seen this in any community. It is a novel way to do it. If it generally works for the community, I don't see why we can't continue it. But if it would make more sense to make it a side and a front and 2 sides, clearly that might be a better fit for these oddly shaped lots,
I agree.
And-
especially since it's hard to figure out where that rear actually is.
Yeah. And Jason, have you ever seen this before either?
I've never experienced this strategy for dealing with it. No.
Okay. And it looks like the applicant, you guys tried to stay at the 10-foot mark if it was side and no rear.
I note that the dimension to the, from the scribed line, let's call it, to the corner of the lot's 10 feet also. So it's like, sort of a way to try to get 10 feet all the way around.
Mhm.
Their designer did yeoman's work during this process to ensure they would fit within the setbacks. The rear setback was a little bit later in the review process, and so this is the iteration of him trying to keep all of the setbacks static, and then meet that contrived rear setback as best as possible.
I really like that idea of a front and 2 sides because the rear is so difficult and that would make it very simple. And, giving 10 feet all the way around is, adequate space, and considering that these lots are all in the same neighborhood, everybody's going to have to deal with it the same way. Any other questions for staff or the applicant?
Nope.
Okay, we can hear from, here, I'll pass these down for everybody. Sure, go ahead.
So as far as the, the 5 properties that Jason was referring to as well, those didn't sustain the same amount of damage that this property sustained, so they're not bound now to have to rebuild within the codes. I mean, if you look along that, that section of homes, they're all in the old setback rules of 10 feet and all that, but only one other lot, which is also on Strandview, the smaller lot, that house was leveled. As of right now, from speaking with them, there's no plans in the works to rebuild, but this is, kind of a unique situation right now with the type of the lot that there is and the fact that, we're trying to rebuild at this point compared to some of the other.
Understood. Would anybody like to make comment on any further comments for the applicant from the board? Okay,
No comment.
thank you. Well, let's see, public comment for this case. Anybody who would like to speak? Would either of you or anybody else want to speak on this behalf, on this case? Can't reach him? Okay. Okay, we'll close the public comment and return to the dais. Any discussion? I really like your option of eliminating a back lot since that little corner can't really be,
I think I think it's a consideration. I don't think we can eliminate that. but
Right.
it's Definitely as part of our overall thought process and evaluation.
All right. Anybody have any comment?
I think I'm hearing you're okay with the front setback.
I am. It's because there's actually so much as an easement going into it. It certainly isn't going to interfere with the condominium. And so, I mean, it's a tough lot to put a house
Yeah.
on, and I understand that. Is anybody ready to make an offer or a motion?
I'll make an offer.
I'm a realtor, sorry.
Looks like a good lot.
I'm a realtor.
I'll make a motion to approve it,
Okay.
both of them, both setbacks.
Okay, based on that it meets the criteria? Doug?
I think, yeah, basically, I think meets the intent. I think if we were not to have this arbitrary rear property line, it would be well within the 10-foot setbacks. If we were to intersect 10-foot setbacks on a triangular lot, which in a way kind of makes sense, then as far as the rear, I think it's okay.
Okay, so you're saying that it meets the finding and conclusions, but in the staff report, he also makes recommendations for conditions for approval. There are 3 conditions. Do you want to discuss those? Or we're in the middle
Well,
of
I
a
think,
motion?
I think those 3 conditions should be,
Added?
added to the,
Okay.
yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot that, but especially about the driveway.
So we have a motion by Doug to approve and add the 3 conditions for approval. Is there a second?
Second, Sutter.
With Don Sada? Okay, all those, or any discussion?
No discussion.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously 4-0. Moving forward. Okay. You're welcome. I gotta scan down here to get to the next case. Okay. Item number B, variance VAR, where's my glasses? Sorry. VAR 20230070 434 Estero Boulevard. Approve with conditions, deny variance number, we already stated it, as stated, a variance for front and rear setback variance to switch the side and rear setback location, a variance for mechanical equipment encroachment. Okay, and okay, Sarah, you want to present? Yes.
No, ex parte.
Oh, any ex parte on this property?
Been to the site, no discussions with anybody.
No ex parte.
Went to the site also.
No ex parte.
And I just want to clarify the maps that were at the site, because there wasn't a zoning thing, doesn't have the address on the maps that are at the site. So is it the box with the yellow tape on it? Does anybody know? Okay, well, see, that's why we need to have a sign at the site, so we know exactly, because there's no property.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no addresses, there's nobody to verify anything with. So I think I know what we're talking about, but I'm not 100% sure. Okay, Sarah, go ahead.
Good morning, Sarah Prostis, Community Development. Richard Durling and Kara Stewart are requesting a variance for 434 Estero Boulevard on behalf of the property owner, the Sarah Tarbell Trust. The applicants are requesting a total of 4 variances, one from table 34-3 to decrease the front and one for the rear setback. A variance per section 34-268A5 to switch the front and side property lines, and a variance from section 34-638D1G to allow mechanical equipment to encroach into a side setback. 434 Estero Boulevard is zoned RM and is one of the non-conforming cottage lots on the north end of the island. The lot measures 60 feet by 50 feet and has a shared access easement from Estero Boulevard. The proposed house does not qualify for the section 34-268 administrative variance setback. or administrative setback variance because the proposed house is 2 stories over flood rather than 1. The proposed house does meet all of the other criteria for the administrative setback variance, however. The previous house on the property had a footprint of approximately 760 square feet. The proposed house has a footprint of 676 square feet. All the proposed setbacks are greater than 5 feet and the ground floor will be open. The applicant is requesting a variance of 9 feet from the front setback to allow a 16-foot front setback, a variance from the rear setback of 5.5 feet for a 14.5-foot rear setback. The applicant is also requesting that the side of the property considered the rear be changed from the property line opposite the access easement to the property line facing the beach. This is a variance per section 34-268A5, administrative setback variances. Additionally, they are requesting a variance from section 34-638D1G to allow a 1.5-foot encroachment of the mechanical equipment on the north side of the property. The previous neighborhood of 12 homes was completely destroyed by Ian. This is the first proposed house in this section of cottage homes. The applicant is here and staff is also available to answer any questions you may have. And I did, Mr. Durling did point out, I made an error in the staff report. I'm not sure how I did that because I have it right in my presentation, but the front setback request is 9 feet, not 11 feet. So they're asking for a 16-foot front setback.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Got a question for staff, and I think if we address this issue up front, we may not need to have all the testimony, go through this longer process. So when looking at the criteria, they meet all the criteria except for one, and it seems like it's associated with the conditions of the case. And staff's assessment seems to be that, given the fact that they did not avail themselves of the administrative variance process, then it's their fault, for lack of a better word, that they didn't go through that process, and therefore the conditions don't warrant support for the variance.
Well, I would say rather than that, I would say it's a design choice in the same way that when you have a design choice for another house, you may have to ask for a front setback. So it's a design choice to have a second story. So the reasons for the variance are.
If not for the administrative variance process, what would be staff's evaluation of that criteria? So meaning that if they didn't have, because we set up an administrative variance process and we did not grant the ability to ask for a second floor. In
Right.
any other case, people have every right to ask for that.
Yes.
So if not for an optional process, then I believe staff would say, yes, they meet that criteria.
Okay, so you're talking about the conditions justifying the variance are or are not the result of actions of the applicant taken after the adoption of the regulation in question. And staff stated the conditions justifying the variance are the result of the actions of the applicant. The variance would not be necessary if the property owner were requesting a single-story home within this proposed footprint. So in staff's point of view, I understand what you're saying in staff's point of view with the design choice. I do understand what you're saying, that they are allowed to have a second story in other instances.
So, and the reason I bring it up is because I think we need to clarify this today, because we're gonna have a lot of cases like this. It came up at the last hearing, and I made the same point. Okay, this is similar to a legal case where the person has the option to go to mediation. That's an option. If they decide to not avail themselves of that option and they go to court, the conditions of the case itself are not changed.
Yeah.
And this case, the conditions, if they go 1 story or 2, it doesn't make a difference. The only thing that they've done is they've opted to not go through the administrative variance process. They shouldn't get penalized for that.
I wouldn't say that staff is penalizing them. If you would like us to view this differently, we will consider that.
Well, I think the test becomes, if not for the administrative variance process, where would you guys fall on this?
If not for the administrative process, I would say that we would say that they didn't necessarily make any changes. This is a small lot, that it would be difficult to make the setback. And the previous home did not meet the setback. So, I mean, I think that you are correct in that. And we can view this differently, and I can talk with the attorney about how staff should review this if
Yeah.
there's a concern. Yes.
And, and just to further examine the administrative variance process, what's interesting to me, and I think staff needs to look at that, is if someone avails themselves of the administrative variance process, then we mandate that they can't have an enclosure underneath their house. But if they go through a regular variance process, that's their right. They don't even have to ask. So but the fact that we're granting administrative variance, we're gonna take something away from it. That's the way our code is written. And I know it's not your staff's fault whatsoever, but it's something that we definitely want to look at.
Okay.
I mean, I think what we were trying to do was take a situation where all of these properties were not buildable and give them an opportunity to, if what they wanted was exactly what they had, they could just go through it and move forward. But if they were going to add square footage or a second floor, they had to come in for a variance. And, you know, I feel like, in my opinion, that if they're not asking for, other than the square footage, small amount that was going to be granted anyway, that they would be putting on a second floor to what is already there would have been approved by special exception or by the approval process of what we granted by right, that, this is kind of no-brainer. Okay, other questions for Sarah?
Nope.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, would the applicant please come forward, and was the applicant given a copy of the staff report?
Yes.
Okay.
Morning, members. For the record, my name is Richard Durling. I'm with Marvin Homes. I'm here on behalf of the owner, Sarah Tarble, on what is a hearing for a variance. Not one of your first, but I'm sure it won't be one of your last. I do want to share with you, I don't know if in your packages you have a survey of the pre-existing structure. You do?
We do.
Okay, great. Want to point out that what we are proposing basically is very close to sitting within the same footprint of the original home. That is 676 square feet. So the request for these setbacks variances are so that we can construct that home still in that 26 by 26 foot footprint. Unfortunately, we do need the ones for the AC equipment platform just because of the regulations and the size of the unit and how much clear space we need around it. And we have asked for determination of a different language on what is the front and the side, and that's because of the way the property is laid out and the access to the property, which would be considered the front, and what would be normally the right would be considered the rear. It faces the Gulf of Mexico. What we're asking for, we feel, is a minimum request for the variance. Obviously, the hardship was created because of the storm, so we're asking to rebuild this property and at the same time be allowed to put the second floor on there so that the investment that the owners are going to make would be in consideration for the value of the property and the location. I do have Ms. Tarble here with us today, who can certainly make some comments on behalf of the application.
Please state your name for the record.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Tarble. I'm the property owner. And really, I just came like everybody else. We never dreamed we'd be in this position. I've come here as a child, loved vacationing here. My big fear and our point of doing what we are requesting the variances is we want to keep it a neighborhood. I'm sure all of you have driven on the north end and saw how quaint the cottages were in that little neighborhood. And my fear is if we can't have the variances, somebody will want to buy all of the lots as one one big property parcel. And my desire is if we would start this and we could build something that made sense instead of just a one-story. Feasibly, it's not to build one story. We're requesting the two-story, that it would inspire the rest of the neighbors, the property owners, to build a home, a single-family home. And, you know, we'll never get back what we had, but we're just trying to improve and make it as quaint and charming as we had before. And so that's really we feel like this is the best way we can get back similar to what we had. I think that's it.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, thanks.
Anybody else wish to speak on this?
So again, we're one of 12 very unique, non-conforming lots of record. And what we're asking for, we feel, is the minimum request. I point out that the size of that footprint is roughly half the size of this room. So it's extremely small space to build in, and it makes perfect sense for us to be allowed to go up that second floor. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Is there any other place that the mechanicals could be put instead of?
Well, I did actually want to locate them on another side, but it was additional, another foot or so in the request for the variance. So this was the minimum of variance of 1.5 feet being on that side.
Mhm.
If I moved it around to the other side, which actually probably would make more sense, then it's a little bit larger variance request.
What about under the building?
You need the air for the.
Yeah. Okay, I just thought I would ask.
A hot water heater, then you can.
Yeah, the other option would be the roof.
But, AC, you need the air.
Yeah, that's a 10-foot setback on that side. The other side is 8. So we'd be into that 4 feet. So we'd only have 4 left versus our 6. So it'd be an additional 2-foot variance request, which we would be happy to do that. It'd actually make more sense for us to have that on that side versus facing what would be the beach face of the house behind us.
Mhm. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Open for public comment if anybody would like to speak on behalf. Jim, state your name for the record, please.
Name for the record, James Inc. I was sworn in. I am here not representing Sarah. We just happen to be neighbors. Our property is at 430 Estero, which is on the Gulf side.
Mhm.
And Jane, I know that if you go out there, it's hard to tell where things are,
Mhm.
but it's 2 back from the remnants of our house
Okay.
is where it is.
Mhm.
I am here to speak on support of what we're doing here with some suggestions.
Okay.
As you know, last time I spoke here, we were working on the land development code and how to get people to build back what they had
Mhm.
with the single story, which I supported, not the 2-story. If it was 2-story, I wanted it to go through this public hearing process.
Mhm.
My personal experience is I submitted for an administrative variance on my house and then was told we didn't do it for conforming lots. And I happen to have a conforming lot because I'm on the beach and the depth goes to the mean high water. So we had to go back and throw that plan in the dumpster and we're building a brand new house,
Mhm.
much larger under the current code.
Okay.
But what I would suggest here, looking at the setbacks, I'm not in support of calling the side setback now a rear setback. It kind of may set a precedence of being able to move that around. If you called them both still side setbacks, you would grant the 9 feet or whatever it is on the front. You'd have to grant, I think it's 12 on the back. And then the side could be compliant, and I think they could shift the house 1.5 feet, and then the AC is not a problem.
Well, it is set at an angle. Is that correct?
No. The original
Ah,
house
okay.
that actually was our house. My dad built it
Oh,
back in the early 60s, and I spent many summer out there before we moved
uh-huh.
down the street to the Gulf front.
I guess I
It
need
was
to-
it was twisted, and it was twisted on purpose with a 5 foot back, 5 foot side, 5 foot rear, so that you've got a view down the easement, so you can see the water between the houses. At the time, weren't there, but you know, as you all know, my dad engineered here forever.
mhm.
He had forward looking on it of saying somebody's going to build out front, not knowing it was going to be him.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so any comments? Well,
So that's just my recommendation from being around here for doing this for 30 years. Is if you called it 2 side setbacks, kept the side setback, slide the house over, just grant them a front and a rear setback, and it all moves forward. I think it'd be great for our neighborhood. I agree 100% with Sarah. I don't want to have to address a situation if the lots were sold to somebody that wanted to do something bigger. I would rather not be here having that conversation. I would rather have 12 houses put back.
thank you. Um,
Can we ask the gentleman from Marvin Homes to comment on the
you want to,
shift?
yeah, would you like to comment on his thoughts?
Originally, we did actually show the configuration of the lot and the naming of this front, rear, sides, as Mr. Inc. has pointed out. We did change it because we could under the variance process to allow us to present a variance that was the least asking in the actual setbacks. We don't have any problem if we want to go back to naming it what it was, which was the one facing the access is considered the front. And that's part of the uniqueness of this property is that that access is actually down what we would consider normally the side. And the face that faces Estero is one back, so it's not right on Estero, so that's not the front. And the rear facing the Gulf, we always consider that to be the rear, but because the access was on that side, we named that the front, and originally the opposite side was the rear. Be happy to change it whatever way the board wants to approve it. And additionally, if you want us to move the AC platform around that side, so that a person who is built on the lot that is on Estero, which would face this house, wouldn't look at that air conditioning unit to be around the corner. Happy to do that as well. I think it makes more sense, but it will mean,
Larger windows.
changing the language a little bit and the amount of footage that we're going to change on the variance.
I personally, I like that compromise to shift it to equalize the side setbacks and then move the air conditioner so it's not.
I reviewed the request and the variance associated with switching the setback or what side it is. That's strictly associated with administrative variance. So you go to the code, you look at the administrative variance section. If you go through the administrative variance process, you can switch your different side setbacks. However, we're not dealing with administrative variance. I don't think that applies. So I would definitely think that we need to provide setbacks to what the rest of the code calls for and the standard setbacks.
Which means not what they're requesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the access would actually be the front. Am I right? No.
I'd like to hear what Sarah.
So for clarification, this was a staff determination. We had a discussion with the development director regarding these administrative variances because this also happened on 106 Hibiscus, where they were coming in and they needed to switch the side and the
Right.
the side and the rear. And because they were coming in for a full variance for other things and they wanted to do the administrative variance, it was less expensive. It saved them $250 to add the administrative variance onto their full variance rather than asking for the administrative variance and having to ask for that, wait for that to get granted, then come forward to the LPA and council. So that was why with the development director and staff, we decided that we would add that in as a full variance request. We didn't see a way to not require them to do the extra steps and pay the extra money if we didn't. In regard to the AC unit, the reason, actually, staff had asked if they would be able to move it to the other side because they were only going to be 4 feet from that side setback. And knowing how close other properties are within this area, we didn't want a mechanical unit to be only 4 feet from from a property line. So we had a concern about the noise that would be generated between two houses that could potentially be very close together. So that was the reason. And, I spoke with Mr. Durling, and that was the suggestion, and he agreed that that made the most sense. But if LPA disagrees with that determination, we can discuss that.
Well, the location, I'm not concerned about the location of the mechanicals. I think if staff and the applicant have agreed as to where it's least intrusive on the neighbors, that's fine with me. Just procedurally, from the standpoint of, we are not asking for administrative variance. I don't think you can ask for variance to a section of the code that does not apply.
So would the applicant be required to request the administrative variance through the director, get approval or denial, then move forward with the additional variances? Is that the LPA's?
I would just suggest that by the time you go to council, you just amend the staff report and say, clearly identify what those yards are, front, side, rear, and whatever is needed, keep the footprint where it is, and just adjust what that setback will be accordingly. I'm in full support for all their variance requests. I don't know how that would affect the exact numbers, but I think it is the minimum request at this point. I think they've done a good job in identifying the location that is least intrusive. So from that standpoint, I support it. I think it's just a question of making sure procedurally that things are done correctly by the time it goes to council.
Okay, thank you.
So are you suggesting moving the mechanicals to the back?
No.
I don't know. I think my understanding from what Sarah is saying is they addressed the issue with the applicant and the current location was deemed the best location. Yeah, so I would say let's keep it there.
Okay,
Otherwise, you only get 4 feet to the property line.
okay.
I looked at it and said, why didn't they put it on the other side?
Any comments, Doug?
No additional comments.
Anybody ready to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Motion to approve the variance request with the understanding that staff and the applicant will go back in and adjust the variance request instead of being a request for a variance to the administrative process, that they clearly identify the front, rear, side setbacks and adjust the amount of variance requested accordingly.
And
But recommendation for approval for those variances with the understanding that they meet all the criteria of the full variance process. And also there are conditions in the staff report and that we include those conditions.
those 3
also.
conditions.
Second, Senneth.
Okay, seconded. Okay, I'll vote, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can I make one comment?
Yep.
Just want to, with respect to what Sarah said with discussing things with the development director, it sounded like that was in the best interest of the applicant. And I at least not disagreeing with Patrick, but in the spirit of kind of moving things forward, I applaud that effort. I think that's what we should be doing, what staff should be doing, what the development director should be doing. If we can help people, save a little
Eliminate the
money, save a little money, move through the process a little quicker, we should be doing that. So I applaud that. And I think that's certainly welcome from my perspective.
Agreed.
And on that issue, I think there's a need for us to look at, instead of charging per variance, it could be where if you have multiple variants, might be a little more of a higher fee, but one all-encompassing fee, because a lot of times you do have options as to how you locate that building on the lot. And if it's purely to minimize the cost of the application cost, you could ask for one big variance to one side, maybe not balance it on the other. We know that it makes a lot more sense to balance it on both sides, but then we hit them up with two fees instead of one. So I think that's definitely something we want to look at is there's multiple variances, one flat fee.
You're welcome. Good. Good to know.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving to, keep forgetting these things. SEZ 2023-0126-163 Old San Carlos, a request to amend SEZ 2021-0050 to temporarily move the 2 COP from 185 Old San Carlos to 163 Old San Carlos, and to amend the conditions for approval.
Good morning, Sarah Probst with Community Development. Susan Bahan, think I'm pronouncing that correctly, owner of 163 and 185 Old San Carlos, is requesting a special exception amendment to temporarily move the location of and the conditions for Resolution 21-46. Resolution 21-46 approved a special exception to allow a consumption on premises of beer and wine with a retail store at 185 Old San Carlos with conditions that amplified music and entertainment and consumption of alcohol were only permitted indoors. The structure at 185 Old San Carlos was severely damaged in the storm and is not a safe structure. The structure at 163 was completely destroyed and the site is now vacant. The applicant wishes to amend the special exception to allow a consumption on premises at 163 Old San Carlos and is proposing an outdoor bar and retail sales area with an outdoor seating area. The applicant is requesting an amendment to the conditions that would allow live music or amplified music outdoors in compliance with the town's noise ordinance. She's also requesting an amendment to the conditions to allow consumption of alcohol outside of a building and proposes the area of consumption of alcohol as the area between the outdoor bar and a fence running along the sidewalk of Old San Carlos. The special exception would be in effect at 163 Old San Carlos until such time as the structure at 185 Old San Carlos is able to receive a CO. The applicant has also requested a waiver of the special exception fee, which the LPA must also make a recommendation to council for. The applicant is here and staff is available to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Questions for staff?
Yeah, question. I see that you're recommending approval. Are you also recommending approval for the waiver of the fee?
I don't know that staff has an opinion
It's
on the
there.
waiver of the fee.
Okay.
There's no criteria for us to evaluate that.
Okay.
Doug?
No comments at this time.
Okay. All right, we'll hear from the applicant.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Susie Bahan. I'm property owner of 163 and 185 Old San Carlos Boulevard. Hurricane Ian destroyed my retail establishment at 163 that has been there since 1979. The building is completely gone and has been demolished. 185 was gutted. It damaged. My home, which is on the second story of 185, is uninhabitable. I had insurance on 163 that has not paid out. I had no insurance on 185. I have not had an operable business since Hurricane Ian, and my family has been severely impacted. So I am asking for the transfer of the 2 COP with retail from 185 to 163 as an outdoor business establishment to not only help my family to create an income, but to also revitalize a very dead area of Old San Carlos Boulevard. Any questions? Oh, and let me just address the fee. I'm asking for a waiver for the fee because I've already paid $3,800 for a 2 COP license and I have yet to utilize it. And the 3,300 would be an amendment to that. We're financially strapped.
So because there were no addresses on the property, are
Mhm.
we speaking of the little one-story property on,
So we're talking about the vacant lot. So
Yeah.
if you're going down from the
Mhm.
beach to the bay,
mhm,
it would be surf style, and then it would be tropical sunset, and then it would have been South Seas Trader,
right?
um, which is now vacant. And the little building next to it is 185 Old San Carlos, which is actually one story,
Okay, yeah. that's
but
what
the
I wanted
second
to
story,
confirm.
yeah, in the back is my home.
Okay, when you were speaking earlier, you said you wanted to transfer the 2 COP and something else. What was that?
So the resolution was a 2 COP with retail.
Oh, okay, I didn't hear, I couldn't understand what you said. That's no
Sorry.
problem, No problem. Okay, any questions?
No.
Doug?
I don't know if do we approve the waiver of fee too? Would we approve this?
Yes, I guess.
I defer to our attorney,
It
but
would,
but I think I would prefer to leave that up to council.
Yeah.
you don't have the right to waive the fee, the council would.
Okay,
And you're going to be recommending, if you want to make a recommendation, you could make a recommendation, but you don't have to.
Yeah, I would agree with Patrick. I think that's a decision for the town council. We're just addressing zoning and that type of issue.
the outside, chairs,
Mhm.
etc. How far does that extend out into the sidewalk?
It doesn't.
So it's on the side of a drive-through or what? Or it
No,
doesn't-
it's the sidewalk, parallels
Sure.
in front,
Mm-hmm.
and there would be a 4-foot fence. And then they would enter through a gate in the fence, and then there would be seating area on my physical property.
Okay.
If you look at page 119 of your packet, that's the little site plan.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. I just wanted to. I see the fencing with the dot, but it's not very clear to me.
Basically, it would be tables with umbrellas.
Okay.
But off the sidewalk, within the property.
It's all within the property
Yeah.
line.
Okay.
You might, okay.
Because it is set back.
Yep.
So you wouldn't be extending the footprint of what the existing building is there right now.
There is no building there.
I thought you were talking about the one-story building.
No, ma'am. That's where the 2 COP currently is approved for. I'm moving it to the vacant lot. I'm asking for approval to move it to what would have been, back in the day, South Seas Trader, the 2-story building that is now gone.
Okay, yeah, I saw that. So I'm confused because you want to do this temporarily and then move it back to the other location?
When I make enough money or my insurance pays out to repair the 185. Yes, ma'am.
So there's no timeline. It's just a temporary
Who knows how long?
perpetuity.
Yes.
That would be my only thought, is that we set some sort of a timeline like we did on a couple others.
Can I just interject really quickly?
Sure.
I don't know how you're going to set a timeline when literally the insurance battles in prior hurricanes like this have taken years, sometimes decades.
It'd be up for review. We'd set it for review again. I just think blanket transfers in perpetuity from one place where it was set to another is probably not in the best interest.
And I agree with Don. If we don't, it can be re-reviewed. I think we understand your hardship and
Mhm.
want to work with you, but technically not something that you would do. Someone could say, hey, I set this up, got very low overhead, making some money, never going to build a building on here. So, The idea is, yes, we want a building to go back up eventually. We want to work with you, but we want to put a timeline where you come back in, you explain, look, I'm still battling through my insurance companies and stuff, and then they would just extend it. So
Right.
I think that's the idea.
Okay. I mean, my attorney
Mhm.
has my insurance claim, so I'm actively pursuing that.
So Don, I would support that. I think just having a time frame where it comes back for review and it can be extended at that time.
Was there any music before?
No, because I never opened.
Mhm.
I was in the, I was in the remodeling process. I was very close to getting it open when Ian hit.
And there's no residential nearby, right? There's no one.
No,
Okay.
it's all zone commercial.
Just looking
I
for-
mean, Yucatan is right down the street, Wahoo Willie's, they all have live entertainment.
Yeah, I was thinking, because I was trying to figure out which side it was on, if there
So
were any
across
homes.
from Yucatan?
Across, yeah, that's what I thought, okay.
It's the
So
north
there's no,
side.
yeah, there's no homes behind there or anything. I'm just,
No.
noise, drums and
Sure.
what we went through with another.
Right. Okay,
What would be a reasonable timeline, do you think, Don?
for review.
I think 180 days.
180
review.
days?
Although it, like she said, it could be years, but I mean, I just think that it needs to be reviewed on a periodic basis just to either extend it or,
I don't think 180 days is time to even get the building built.
Yeah, I would say
well,
maybe.
they're not building a building. They're remodeling the other building once, correct?
No.
This would be until the other building was remodeled, is what I'm. or rebuilt.
Correct,
Okay.
but my issues are the fact that my insurance we're battling them. And I have to basically make enough money in 180 days to repair the 185 building to have it transferred back to.
How about, Don, how about 12 months?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about the time, I guess. Is there another process here? I mean, we're asking for a temporary transfer from one address that was already granted this to another. I mean, there is a process where the applicant could go through and ask for a permanent on this address, correct? But we're asking for a temporary. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. She requested a temporary.
Right. So
We're treating this as an amendment to the previous resolution. It could be the same process if she wanted to cancel the previous one and create a new one, but I don't think she has interest in that because she wants to go into the 185.
right. Okay.
And
So-
I want to rebuild 163.
Right, and so if we were looking for 2 years though, or something, we're establishing a different kind of business at this address. So it seems like there'd be a different process to say, Fort Myers Beach, I'd like to create this, outdoor seating music venue at this address for some time in perpetuity. Could be 5 years.
Well, I mean, we're reviewing it as a special exception. So
Okay.
you can set it for any period of time, and it could be if she wanted it to be there permanently, it would be the same process.
Okay,
But in this instance, that was not what she was looking to do, so we addressed it this way. But it would be the same process either
Yeah.
way.
And I believe what we did with the whale, when we asked them to come back in periodically, was to not have to go through an application process and no fees.
right.
So basically, it's just a check-in, it's a milestone at 6 months. They give an update to council, and they say, here's where I stand, and I'm asking for more time. And council can evaluate that and make that decision. But I would agree, and I'm assuming you are local and you live here, so you're around, you don't have to fly back in for this.
I live in a trailer in Benita right now.
So yes, applicant can show up
Yes.
and talk about where she stands 6 months from now. I don't think that's too onerous.
I just request the applicant, what would you set as a reasonable timeline? And do you understand the point?
I understand
Okay.
completely.
Is there a timeline in your mind that is reasonable?
I mean, there's so many variables that could be at play here. I would ask for 2 years.
Okay.
Nothing moves fast.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, if my insurance pays out sooner and I can get the ball rolling and I can get 185 repaired, then I can come back and report that and say, hey, I'd like to transfer it back to 185. I don't have any intentions of keeping
Right.
163 permanent.
Are you comfortable with 2 years?
I would say I'm comfortable with a maximum of a year, but again, no fee, no application
A review
requirement,
at a
just
year.
A review.
check in, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
come
so-
back in a year and just give us an update.
Right. I think that's a good
Yeah, I
idea.
think it's not to say that it's not 2 years. It's just
Mhm.
to say we need an update at some, so
Sure.
we're not setting it in perpetuity before it's reviewed again.
Okay.
Sarah, is it?
Would a good potential condition be that she would come back every year, or it would change over to, so that we also catch that CO issue. If 185 gets the CO, she has to alter it and
Yeah.
put it there.
Add an
And-
additional condition number 6, that there'd be a time frame for an
So
update.
at
could
that
continue.
time, when the CO is received for 185, that special exception resolution will have to be amended in order to put it back on 185. Do you want her to have to come in and go through the whole process, or can that be part of the,
Review.
okay. I'll fashion a condition that addresses that.
Encompasses all of that.
Yes, thank you.
Anything else you'd like to say?
No,
If
I
staff
appreciate
doesn't
it.
have any other questions, we'll
No,
open
ma'am.
public comment.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody from the public like to speak? One at a time, okay. When you get to the podium, would you please state your name for the record? Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Richard Fowler. I've been a resident here for approximately 43 years, and I'm here in support of Suzanne's request to transfer temporarily her license. I believe it's in the best interest, not only of Suzanne for her family's sake, also for the town. Generating business at that end of San Carlos, I think would be a very helpful and good thing for all of us. And it was hit, that was hit very hard. And I think to bring people into that area and a bit of joy and happiness would just really improve the situation.
I regret, I should have asked you to state your address for the record also.
I live at 15031 Punta Rasa Road, number 1201.
Thank you.
So I'm in Punta Rasa.
Okay.
I've been
Very
on Sanibel for 40 some years,
Mhm.
but I patronize Fort Myers Beach
Absolutely.
constantly.
Thank
And I
you.
just wanted to make my opinion
Sure,
stated to you.
Thank you.
Okay,
thank you.
thank you very much.
When you come up to the podium, please state your name and address for the record.
Good morning, my name is Claire Maggio. I'm currently displaced in a travel trailer, but my address is 75 Gosu Trail up in Indian Creek. I was a resident of Fort Myers Beach on Del Mar for several years when I was transferred here by the post office.
Mhm.
And I'm here in support of Susie, and I lost my
Thought process.
yes. I'm in support for Susie and her family for the permit for the bar retail venue. I just think it would bring much needed business to the island. It would also enable Susie to make a living and getting her life back on track. It's been a difficult journey for all of us, but especially so for the business owners. Us, we can go back to our jobs. We can generate financially, but our business owners can't do it.
Mhm.
So thank you for allowing me to voice my opinion.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Come on up. Were you sworn in? Okay, I didn't remember. Okay,
My name is Tara Boyd. My address is 1001 Cheyenne Trail, Fort Myers Beach, Florida. Also Indian Creek resident, Fort Myers Beach resident. My husband and I are here to support Susie and her family. Before Hurricane Ian, as you know, their business was thriving since the late 1970s. It brought great shopping to the old San Carlos area of our island. And I think that approval for this transfer, it would give Susie and her family the ability to kind of regain some sense of normalcy and also financial security. And then it would give us residents a sense of the same, right? Not financially, but for, regained sense of normalcy for us as well as survivors, and to get our island back to being a joyful place, and also bring with the shopping, and then just with the bar and wine establishment, it would also bring visitors and bring, for families some financial relief, which is much needed. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, you'll need to be sworn in at the podium.
I do. Hello, my name is Stephen Andrews. I'm 436 Umatilla Trail, Fort Myers Beach, Florida, also Indian Creek. We've been down here, myself and my wife, we retired in 2015. But we've been coming down off and on, actually 2018. And after Ian hit, that's when I met Susan. And it's just devastating to see what happened to our world. And business like her is needed. We need to get Old San Carlos back to what it was. And I think you should allow her to move her business over to create a place for people to go on Old San Carlos. Because I love Fort Myers Beach, my piece of paradise. And I want it back.
We all do.
And I think business like hers are going to help it bring back Old San Carlos to what it was. So I think you should approve what she wants to do. It'll help us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? We'll close public comment at this time and bring it back to the table. Any discussion?
None for me.
Okay, anybody ready to make a motion?
I'll move to approve the request for special exception to, as stated, to move from 185 to 163, Old San Carlos, with the 5 conditions recommended by staff, and adding condition 6, which is to set up for a review at 12 months, and the additional language that Sarah was going to add around
Finding that
around the
they meet the
CO.
findings and
that they meet
conditions.
the findings and conditions, and that that review would not be a new review or new request, no additional fees, or just a review.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Doug. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving right along. Okay, so I'm going to move the LPA members' items up because we're going to have to close the meeting at 11 o'clock. And I know that Patrick had some items he wanted to discuss before we adjourned. So if you'd like to start.
Okay, well, thank you very much for granting me this time and changing the agenda a little bit. Just wanted to address a few items. I've been watching council meetings, public comments, also some of the stuff that we see online. And one of the things that we keep hearing is, why are so many variances being granted? So I wanted to discuss that, because I think the average person does not, it's hard for the average person to cope with the land development code and the comprehensive plan. I do this professionally, and every day we question the interpretation of the code, and we differ on opinions sometimes. But when it comes to variances, we are going through exceptional circumstances. We've had a hurricane that has devastated our island. if not for the hurricane, we would not be seeing that many variances coming before us. So the volume is much, much, much greater than it's ever been. So that's for the people out there, why are there so many? Well, many homes have been destroyed, and unfortunately, people need variances to be able to rebuild. And this is the important part, and I think we have to look at this as a town in a lot more detail. We have a land development code that was developed to protect the status quo. The intent behind that land development code was to limit change and to keep the character of this island. Unfortunately, while it suited us fine at the time, it's not working for us right now. And I'll give you a few examples. Okay, so if you guys look at a zoning map and you see all the yellow, which is pretty much almost every single-family residential neighborhood. We've got some brown also, which is a conservation district. Those are the main residential neighborhoods. So in the RS district in yellow, we have a minimum width for lots of 75 feet. Okay. The average lot on Fort Myers Beach is 50 feet wide. So as a town, we intentionally made all those lots non-conforming, and we made it very difficult for people to redevelop and rebuild. That was the intent. The intent no longer works for us. So we are forcing people in a situation when they have to rebuild that they must go through a variance process. And so I want people to understand that in the public as to what's happening and how we're set up, okay? Also, if you look at an RC district, for example, because we've had some cases come before us, a lot of those lots are 50 feet or less. But at 50 feet, okay, these are small lots. The average is probably 50 by 80. So if you take away the setbacks, the required setbacks on those lots, you're left with a footprint, okay, that allows no greater than 1,200 square feet of a footprint for development. I don't know about you guys, but if I'm going to spend, and I am spending a lot of money rebuilding my house, but if I'm going to spend some money to rebuild my house, I'm going to rebuild it a little bigger. My family has lived in a 1,200 square foot home for many years on this island. It was great for my wife and I when we bought it, and it seemed plenty, but then we had children, and it's very crammed, and we've been waiting for years and years to improve, and now we're going to take this opportunity to really expand the house. But 1,200 square foot is not a big home. It's not a big footprint. So what we're doing is we're forcing people that want a little bigger home to go to second story. You start putting stairwells in there, potentially elevators, more doors, heavier foundations to support that weight. It's a lot of added cost. So if we acknowledge that we have small lots, why do we have the same standard setbacks, which are generous setbacks for every zoning district, especially the RC, which we acknowledge are smaller lots than the standard? We don't even adjust the setbacks for that district. So I think we need to go back and comprehensively look at the setbacks for each zoning district and say, post Ian, does that make sense? Again, think about it, folks. 25 feet for a setback from a right of way and 20 feet in the rear yard. Those are generous setbacks. Most modern subdivisions do not require that. So again, I don't know what the right number is or what the will of this town is and the council, but I think we need to revisit that, and that would alleviate a lot of these variances we're seeing. But until then, this takes a while. You have to evaluate this. Staff has to really look at it in depth, come up with an inventory, come up with suggestions. But until then, we're going to see a lot of variance. So for the public out there, that's why we see them. I think it is our duty to go through them and to consider them seriously and to try to find relief for the residents and help them back in their home. So that's the first issue I wanted to discuss. Second issue was, I've heard a lot of comments about outbound and why is outbound getting so many, what? homebound, sorry, apologize, homebound, getting so many variances. So again, to explain this to the public, homebound is a builder, but they've taken it upon themselves to request the variances for their clients. We're gonna see many other variances from other modular builders, so Affinity and Jacobson. But typically, the way those folks operate is you buy the home from the builder, then you have to find a construction company contractor that will erect the home. And then those people are not in the business of asking variances for the homeowners. So people are going through that process. First, they have to find a builder, then they have to find a local contractor. Then they're gonna realize, well, we're gonna need a variance. And then they either have to decide to move forward and do it themselves or hire someone to bring it forward. It takes a while. So we are gonna see variances from other folks. It's just taking a little longer. And again, homebound, in my book, are not doing anything wrong. They're just moving a little faster than others. So that's the second issue. The third issue that I want to discuss is so my family and I, before school starts every year, we do a little getaway with the family close by last long weekend before school starts, and had the pleasure of going to the Minnesota beach area, Casey Key. I had never been there. And we were with some friends, some beach friends here, and people were commenting about how had that old Florida feel, how it was cozy, it was nice. But as a planner, I'm having those discussions with them of like, what is it that we like about this place? And how can we emulate that on Fort Myers Beach? And they've got some old funky little buildings very close together. But the one thing that they do have is they have way more vegetation than we do. And they have a really big dune system. So the dune issue we are addressing with these easements, and I think that's a great thing. There's an aesthetic quality to it, but there's also a resiliency, hardening, and there's a lot of reasons why we should have that. But I'm thinking of like, okay, what are the things that we can do locally as we rebuild? There might be a place for architectural requirements, but again, I know that's controversial. We do have some planting requirements, but I think we should really look at those planting requirements, especially on the residential side. Not having something real structured where it's a buffer or it's an exact location, but that we promote green cover, ground cover, and more plantings. And give the flexibility to the homeowner as to where they want to plant it on their property. But I think this is something that feeds upon itself when you start creating a community where it's lush, it's green, it's attractive. The next neighbor, instead of putting rock all over their yard, may decide that I wanna emulate that and I wanna plant more. So I would suggest that maybe we recommend to council or we ask staff to look at how we can change our code to enhance our tree and our green cover requirement. And I think, Doug, we've talked about this, for example, and Doug's a big proponent of using natives, really push the use of
Definitely.
natives, but more planting. So those were the three things I wanted to bring up to the group.
I
Gary
think
talked
with,
about.
that's a great idea, Patrick. And from my own experience, which I experimented with in my own house, the various native plants take so much less care, less watering, no
And survive.
fertilizer at all. Probably kill them if you fertilize them. That I just don't know why they're not used more, because I found that it was easy to grow native plants without any care whatsoever. And other than they grew like crazy, so I had to like keep them trimmed. But I think along with that thought is some education to the benefits of gumbo limbo trees and plants that just do not even need fertilizer.
Right.
If you fertilize them, they probably die.
And I'd also like to comment on your discussion on all the variances. And, you know, I think people don't realize that with the amount of houses that have been lost on this island, many of them and entire neighborhoods would be non-buildable. All the cottages at the north end of the island would be not buildable. So there are people who would be out of a home and nowhere to go and no way to come back. And we're giving them an opportunity by having a variance process based on our own land development code that would say no. And we want our neighbors back. We want this island to be, like it was, as much as we can get it back with the people that were here. And so I think you should applaud those who are bringing in variances to get these people back in their home and be happy that people are able to get them from these committees. And, I think that if people put themselves in that position, okay, I have a cottage lot, I have a parallelogram lot, I have a triangle lot, and I can't fit a normal house on that space. Do I just go away? Or do I try to get my home back? And I want people to come back. So we're trying to give them a path.
Interestingly, I had the same thought myself. As I was coming here this morning, I was talking to my wife and I'm like, man, we grant a lot of variances. But then I started thinking about it and I had a lot of the same thoughts Patrick had that, well, yeah, because so many of the existing older homes were, well, all of them were totally destroyed, but they were non-conforming to begin with. And we have a lot of odd-shaped properties on Fort Myers Beach. And it's hard to write a set of rules that just applies everywhere without consideration. And I think our committee has been very thoughtful on the variances that we have granted. We have discussed them thoroughly, and there's a lot of information in our packages. And the ones we've granted have been justified and actually provide a improved, if we held them to the code, the redevelopment would not be as attractive as it would be if we show some flexibility.
Yeah, our land development code wasn't written for a hurricane destroying the entire island. So, and I think it's unfortunate. The only thing I dislike about the variance process is that the only option is for, burdening staff with the amount of work that we have to, and ultimately this committee and council for, or this LPA and council to have to review them, because we in effect become the bottleneck. We have to be, right, because the land development code doesn't allow it. So yeah, the island would end up being either big swaths of a lots would have to go to a developer and be put in larger conforming lots, resorts, or other options. So yeah, the only regret I have about it is that we can't move faster, and we just don't have enough people. But I applaud the homebounds and the other builders that are helping people, because that's what I think our staff is doing, is helping people. It seems very, very coordinated and complementary process towards our property owners. And then I would just add one more thing. I think almost every, if not every, most every variance that we've granted has actually improved upon what structure was on the lot previous. And so in every case, I look at a variance and say, this might have been a structure that was 5 feet from the property line or nearer the property line, and now we're actually getting a lot better. We may still not be within the full setback, but as Patrick mentioned, we have some pretty conservative setbacks here. So yeah, I think this LPA and council's helping staff move the process forward. So
Agreed. Okay, member items, Don?
none. Thank you.
Member item?
No.
I just want to say that my sister called me this morning with a tornado that went through their lake location. It went down their street and into the cul-de-sac of the lake. And she says, I now get what you went through, and mine is nothing compared because my house is still standing. But then the the amount of destruction in the middle of the afternoon, you know, is amazing. And I think people have to realize that the emotional and the physical devastation that people have experienced and are trying to rebuild and survive this is tough. And we need to be kinder and more willing to listen and be more open to change, because everybody's going to have to change here. So that's on my comments. Doug?
No, ma'am, no more comments. Thank you.
Okay, go back to administrative agenda. Nothing? Okay.
I did want to let you know, at your, this is August, September LPA meeting, we want to have, there are going to be 2 items on the agenda, plus we're going to do the comprehensive plan. So you guys will have the comprehensive plan shortly to start your review of that document. We are hoping to get any recommendations, any changes, everything worked out at that meeting, the goal. Granted that may not happen, but we wanted to get a document in front of you so that you could make decisions about what you were reading. Theoretically, we would be moving to the second October meeting for town council. Again, this is all just staff's concept of a schedule, and we may not make it. You may see it again, but that's the goal, so that we can get this moving, so we can get it out, and then we can move on to the change to the land development code, because there's a very strong need for that, and we recognize that, but we really need to get that comp plan moved before we start making a bunch of changes to the code. We want to do an overhaul, recognizing all the changes that are necessary.
Sir, are we still planning the meeting to be on September 12th?
That is the date I have, yes.
And we don't have any scheduled for a second meeting in September or October at this point?
No, we do not.
All right, attorney items? Great. Well, thank you. Well, good. Community development items, anybody? All righty, moving along. Items for next agenda, we just discussed. So anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, we all second that.